a literary fiction about childbirth translated from the Japanese, a horror set in space, a collection of short stories, a 500-year history of the Americas, and the Chinese diaspora in America. I'm Veronica, and these are 5 new books I'm excited for, being published in April 2025. First up is Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata, translated from the Japanese by Jini Tapley Takamori. This is a literary fiction featuring a version of Japan where all children are born via artificial insemination. Amane and her husband Saku move to the mysterious Experiment City, or Paradise Eden, where everyone is considered a mother to every child, men use artificial wombs, and children are nameless. As a girl, Amane is horrified to learn that she was conceived naturally rather than through artificial insemination, a practice which has become the norm. Although she wishes to get away from the strange ways of her mother, her infatuation with both anime characters and real people have a sexual force that is undeniable. As an adult, she inhabits a sexless marriage as sex has become taboo, and she and her husband decide to live in this new experimental town. The publisher says, "Men are beginning to become pregnant using artificial wombs that sit outside of their bodies like balloons, and children are nameless, called only Kodomo-chan. Is this the new world that will purify Amane of her strangeness once and for all?" Murata is known for Convenience Store Woman and Earthlings, neither of which I've read, but I've been really interested in, and this might be the kick I need to finally check out her work. A world where men gestate children? Sign me up. I mean, I still wouldn't want to raise a child, but this makes the prospect slightly less horrifying. The book will be available on April 15th. Next is Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes, published by Tor Nightlife, 304 pages. In this space horror story, an interplanetary political scandal sends Hallie into hiding on a space barge that has been housing the cryogenically frozen bodies of some of Earth's wealthiest for more than a century. The publisher says, "The ship feels like a crypt, and the isolation gets to Hallie almost immediately. She starts to see figures crawling in the hallways, and there's a constant scraping, slithering, and rattling echoing in the vents. It's not long before Hallie realizes she may have gotten herself trapped in an even more dangerous situation than the one she was running away from." Horror is not usually my genre, but set it in space, and I'm there. The question is, what's going to happen with those bodies? The book comes out on April 8th. The next book is Atavists, Stories, by National Book Award finalist Lydia Millet, published by Norton, 256 pages. This collection of linked short stories promises to explore generational conflict, class, and the era of mass overwhelm from tender, joyful, and alienated perspectives. Some characters are in families, some live alone, but all of them are some form of an ist. From Millet's website, the various ists who people these linked stories, from futurists to insurrectionists to cosmetologists, include a professor who's morbidly fixated on an old friend's Instagram account, a woman convinced that her bright young son-in-law is watching geriatric porn, a bodybuilder who lives an incel's fantasy life, a couple who surveil their neighbors after finding obscene notes in their mailbox, a pretentious academic accused of plagiarism, and a suburban ex-marathoner dad obsessed with hosting refugees in a tiny house in his backyard. This sounds like a diverse cast of characters, and I love the idea of using them and their different viewpoints to look at societal frictions that I imagine will be very relevant to our world. The book is scheduled for release on April 22nd. Next is América, A History of the New World by Grandin, published by Penguin, 640 pages. This history of the Western Hemisphere covers 500 years and promises to be full of characters to reveal how the many nations of the Americas define themselves through engagement, reflection, and struggle with each other. What's interesting here is that while many books look toward Europe to talk about the Americas, Grandin instead looks south at Latin America and how it forged its own identity in struggle with the lands to its north. From Penguin's website, at once comprehensive and accessible, América shows that centuries of bloodshed and diplomacy not only helped shape the political identities of the United States and Latin America, but also the laws, institutions, and ideals that govern the modern world. In doing so, Grandin argues that Latin America's deeply held culture of social democracy can be an effective counterweight to today's spreading right-wing authoritarianism. Grandin is a professor of history at Yale. He has won the Pulitzer and Bancroft Prizes and has been a finalist for the National Book Award. I am woefully bad at history, and I always aim to learn more when I have the chance, especially when it's about my country and my ancestors. I just hope this doesn't suffer what I call the devil in the white city problem, where the authors nowadays try to use a form of narrative nonfiction where the people are treated like characters. Erik Larson was very successful at this, and even though you knew he couldn't have possibly known everything he put into the people's minds, the characters' minds, it worked because the storytelling was so good that you really didn't care. I find that more nonfiction tries to do that nowadays, but it really only worked the once. And I hope this book doesn't try to do the same thing. Nevertheless, I'm really interested in giving it a try. The book will be available on April 22nd. The next book is Strangers in the Land, Exclusion, Belonging, and the Epic Story of the Chinese in America by Michael Luo, published by Doubleday, 576 pages. In this history, Luo traces more than 100 years of Chinese people in America, from the mid-19th century when people immigrated during the gold rush, to the mid-20th century when the U.S. welcomed immigration from Taiwan. The publisher's website says, Luo follows the Chinese from these early years to modern times, as they persisted in the face of bigotry and persecution, revealing anew the complications of our multiracial democracy. At the book's heart is a shameful chapter of America's history, the brutal driving out of Chinese residents from towns across the American West. The Chinese became the country's first undocumented immigrants, hounded, counted, suspected, surveilled. In 1889, while upholding Chinese exclusion, Supreme Court Justice Stephen J. Field characterized them as strangers in the land. Only in 1965 did America's gates swing open to people like Luo's parents, immigrants from Taiwan. Today, there are more than 22 million people of Asian descent in the United States, and yet the stranger label, Luo writes, remains. Reading Carissa Chen's Homeseeking is directly responsible for my interest in this book. I mentioned in my intro video that reading is one way for me to learn about the world from perspectives that are different from mine. Homeseeking, with its focus on the Chinese diaspora, awakened me to a history that I was largely unaware of, and I'm eager to learn more. This is not the kind of stuff that you learn in school, at least not when I was in school, yet it's such an important part of both world and American history. The book will be out on April 29th. You can find links to the publisher's websites below, as well as a link to Library Journal's post of all of the books coming out in April. What books are you excited to read? Let me know in the comments. That's all from me today. I hope you read well.